Good morning, everybody. This is Grant with State of the Spark. Excited for a fun show this morning. We're going to talk about how and why you should eliminate the construct of right and wrong within context. Yes, there's definitely context on eliminating the constructs of right and wrong. We're going to talk about that today. There's a good time and a bad time to eliminate the constructs of right and wrong. We're going to talk about when you should today. We're also going to talk about the artist who actually became her artwork and how that actually works and what it says about personal development. And last but not least, we're going to talk about which of the Dark Triad. The Dark Triad are personality traits and negative personality traits, but which one of them actually gives you more happiness? There's actually there's research on a negative personality trait that gives you more happiness. We're going to cover all that this morning very briefly. But before any of that, you know we're covering Cup of Gratitude. What on earth are you grateful for this morning? What in heaven or earth or whatever you're up to today, what are you most grateful for? You might have woken up this morning absolutely miserable. You might have woken up this morning afraid of the future. You might have woken up this morning, as Marissa probably did, thinking, we're not at the beach. We spent all last week at the beach. So I'll tell you what I'm grateful for. Number one, I'm grateful that we were able to spend all last week at the beach. It was a workcation, very little cation, more work than anything. We were working on an investment property. We were working on our businesses. We were working on relationships. We didn't have many shows last week, which I was reticent about, but we were able to spend the week there. So I'm grateful for a week on the beach. Jessica says, yay, welcome back. I'm grateful for my health. Man, I'm so grateful for my health. I was at the gym this morning working on my health. I'm grateful that I'm able to get around. I'm seeing other people at 8. I'm realizing I'm 42 this year. 41, 42. I don't know. Marissa has the math. I'm 41 or 42 this year. And I'm realizing others of my peers, their health has declined rapidly. And I'm checking myself, making sure it doesn't go down. So I'm grateful for a week at the beach, a week for relaxation, and the ability to control my state at any time. Reminders that it's important that I control my state at any time. I'm grateful for that. What are you grateful for this morning? What's getting you going? Even if you are facing difficulties, can you find one thing to be grateful for this morning? I sure hope you can. Otherwise, what is it even worth getting out of bed for? You should just stay in bed until you find something to be grateful for. Be grateful for the show. Be grateful for this day. Be grateful for your shoes. Be grateful for your food. Be grateful for the electricity coming into your house. Be grateful for the Wi-Fi. Find something, anything to be grateful for this morning. That's what I'm grateful for. Vacation with my wife, working on our investments, talking about how we're going to invest in more crypto, how we're going to be investing in real estate, and some of the challenges, what we've learned about real estate, and also, of course, reflecting on 10 years of marriage. Marissa actually went through and we did a Google Photos review of our last 10 anniversaries, and it was good. It was good. So that's what I'm grateful for. I'd love to hear from you what you're grateful for. Let's talk about other news. So we find from an artist. We were observing an artist today, or I was reading about an artist today, the artist Lynn Hirschman Leeson, and her performance art piece that leads us to realize, or at least confirm, continuously reinforce that we can become whatever we choose to become if we simply rehearse it enough. You know, oftentimes people want to get fit, so they have to like whip themselves up and like, okay, I'm going to be fit. I'm going to be fit. No, you just got to dress the part, be the part, act the part, and cognitive dissonance will eventually lead you there. So this artist, Lynn Hirschman Leeson, back in 1973, was a performance artist. And this artist decided that as her performance piece, she wanted to make a commentary on the plight of females in the 70s. She thought it was ridiculous what was expected of them. She thought it went against nature. So she went ahead and decided to do a performance art piece. And that performance art piece was to become Roberta Brightmore, a false personality that she took on, Roberta Brightmore, and she was going to live as this person for the next 5 years. Can you imagine giving 5 whole years of your life for a performance art piece? And here was the catch. She wore the same outfit every single day. It was a particularly tan pattern dress on sale that she bought on sale for $5.99. She wore it every single day, and she made sure that the tag showed $5.99 every single day. She wore this for 5 years, and this is an impressive art piece, right? And we've seen a lot of this in the modern day, one dress, these people who are like, can I wear one dress in multiple different ways and save money and make commentary about consumerism? We've seen these sort of things today. But Lynn Hershman Leeson led the way. Now, what she found, because she stuck to this for 5 years, and she didn't dress it up. She didn't wear scarves one day and kind of invert the dress as we see in today's Instagram versions of this. No, she wore the same exact outfit so that people saw the tag and people began to question. So the original goal was to show the trap of the female experience in the 70s. What did she actually find? She said she found that she had become completely free. Now, she became completely free because she was free of consumerism, right? The art piece itself was a single outfit, and she could quit making that decision. And that's why you see me wear the same exact outfit nearly every day. Although with our time at the beach, I have to admit to some of you, I might start wearing my flip-flops a bit more. But she was free from having to purchase the same outfit or purchase new outfits because she could wear the same outfit every day. She also found that she was becoming Roberta Brightmore. And she was becoming this person who did dress up. Even though it was the same outfit, she did feel that she could stand up taller, think more clearly. She got a lot of respect from society, especially those who didn't notice the tag and didn't know who she was. They just saw this gal who was dressed up out and about, and she started receiving the societal benefits of being someone who dresses up. She realized that if we walk in another's shoes, we learn to appreciate it, but that we can also change who we are. If we just dress the part and act the part, we'll become the part. And I know that a lot of people out there don't like the idea. They like the idea that personal development is something else. You have to grind it out. You have to work it out real hard. And though there is that, a lot of personal development is showing up, dressing the part, and acting the part. You could boo-hoo and say, fake it till you make it. You could call it that. That's a real negative way to view it. Or you could say, I'm practicing. I'm practicing being the person I want to be. I'm practicing. So here's a quick link to an entire article devoted to how artists dress. And I chose this article because of this one particular section, which I really loved, about the person known as Roberta Brightmore, though she was truly Lynn Hershman Leeson. So that's our first piece of other news. Let's talk about a new study that proves that one dark personality trait actually makes you happier. Let's talk about it. Sorry, just got to share my link everywhere. So in Korea, a new study focused in what in psychology is known as the Dark Triad. Now, you want to pause for a quick second here. Hear me on this. If you have someone in your life who you guys are very close, don't send this to a rando who you just want to dog. But if you have a confidant in your life who you've talked about one of these three traits, including narcissism, I encourage you to tag them in the comments or share this episode with them. Just click the quick share button and share it with them and mention this, because we're going to talk about psychopathic behavior, narcissistic behavior, and Machiavellian behaviors known as the Dark Triad. So a new piece of research came out of Korea where they were wondering how personality traits affect happiness. And for the luck of the draw, they landed on the Dark Triad. The Dark Triad is Machiavellianism, psychopathy or psychopathic behavior, and narcissism. And we know that these are kind of the crowning jewel of negative personality traits. And we all kind of think like we know what's up with these negative personality traits. Well, this researcher in Korea wanted to kind of see how these correlated. So they did a huge study, well, a large study. I wouldn't say it's huge. They did a large study with 1,100 people. And they did several scales. There's 8 scales of happiness that are kind of known, and these were new to me. Number 1, the fear of happiness scale. On a scale of 1 to 100 or 1 or 10, how afraid of happiness are you? On a scale of the externality of happiness, is happiness something you can achieve? Is it something inside of you, something outside of you? The fragility of happiness. The transformative suffering. Is suffering good because it makes you better? That sort of scale. The inflexibility of happiness. Can happiness be subjective? The valuing of happiness. How much do you value happiness? Inclusive happiness scale. Is happiness something that you're included in and that the people around you are included in? And one I still don't even know, eudaimonism and hedonism scale. Are you more into hedonism or are you more into kind of a neutral life? So they took these 1,100 participants, had them rate these scales, and then tested for the Dark Triad. And they certainly found a correlation. First and foremost, Machiavellianism and psychopathic behavior, both, and even on small scales, even if you are only moderately psychopathic, even if you are only moderately Machiavellian, they had a reduced satisfaction in life. They had a negative negative affect about things. They had fewer positive relationships. They just had people in their lives, but they didn't consider them friends or close. They did believe happiness was fleeting, or that happiness can lead to bad things, blind sides. Well, if you're too happy too much of the time, you might not be paying attention to this, that, or the other. Meanwhile, as you guessed, narcissism led to more happiness. Now, they attributed this to several things. But one of the things they found is people that even have a small or moderate amount of narcissism, they are generally adaptive. The adaptive trait, the ability to adapt to one's situations, often correlates with not just narcissistic people. There are other people that are adaptive. But quite often, as you poll people who are adaptive, some people who don't like them could call them narcissistic. Grandiosity and a positive self-regard, those who believe that they're worth something, that they're valuable. These are all traits that are associated with narcissism. There are also traits that could be associated with just a positive outlook on life or a positive person, but more often than not, being a person who is more positive than others generally, I have often been accused of narcissism. And I have observed personally, I do exhibit when I'm in an unhealthy state of mind. I do exhibit narcissistic behaviors. But when I'm in a healthy state of mind, I don't exhibit narcissism, but I exhibit these traits and have been accused of narcissism. It's hard to actually gauge. Last but not least, they associated this that narcissists often have socially desirable responses. As people say good morning, narcissists often are like, wow, attention, good morning to you, sir. Could just be a positive affect, but quite often these are attributed to narcissism. And self-enhancement biases. We see that things are going on in the world that enhance ourselves. When something positive happens or something negative happens, we get into a car accident, we look for how to build a relationship with the person in the ambulance or the other person in the car. We look how to serve and go, man. And then we think, well, maybe insurance will pay for this and maybe I'll get a new car. Is it narcissistic? Well, it's definitely self-enhancing. So this trait, narcissism, of the dark personality triad is the one that is associated most often with generating happiness. Do I believe you should go be a narcissist? Of course not. But I do believe we can learn from this. I do believe that we can learn that there are certain traits, whether it's for the dark triad, the dark personality triad, or other positive personality traits, we can say, if I want to feel more happy, I just need to do what the artist Hirschman did and wear that outfit. Be that person. Even if I'm pretending, I should put on the pretender and become that person because I just want to feel happier. Let me give you a link to this research so that you can know I'm not making this up. Boom. There you go. So what's the value? What's the takeaway? Just because someone's positive doesn't necessarily mean they're not narcissistic, but just because they're positive doesn't mean they are. It means that, of the 3 negative personality traits, you can also derive happiness. But if you're lacking in happiness, You could simply start to choose to see the things around you that are benefiting you and feel a little bit happier. And this is where we have an advantage in religion when we think all things work together for good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. That's a Christian scripture where all things work together for good for me. If you start taking that on, all things work together for good for me, I guarantee you're going to start to feel a little bit happier, and then maybe becoming a little more adaptive. That's something else we can learn from narcissists, how to be adaptive in nearly any situation. So check that article out. Of course, I thought that was fun to check out. Let's talk about why I got into motivational speaking and how we can begin to deconstruct right and wrong. Let's talk about it. Now, this obviously came up in a personal experience I had this week where right and wrong, I really started pondering right and wrong. And we do know that there is a sense of right and wrong. We know that that sense is just that. It's a sense. It's abstract. And we know that right and wrong is a moral construct, right? Right and wrong is morality and ethics. It's not anything specific. We know that C.S. Lewis pointed out that someone asked him, is polygamy wrong? And he said, well, I know that you can be married to one person, monogamy. I know that you can be married to multiple people, polygamy. But I know that you can't be married to all the people. And this pondered people, and those who are familiar with C.S. Lewis, we know he was generating a construct of, basically it's what RGB, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I always mess up her name, what she said once in a case about pornography. She said, I know what sex looks like, and though I could not tell you what porn is, I know it when I see it. And the same is true of right and wrong. But this is why right and wrong never or rarely is beneficial in a disagreement or an argument, because it's abstract. And it's very difficult to use the concepts of right and wrong to actually get the outcome you desire. Quite often, especially with those we love, those around us, those we want to be on our team, those we think are on our team, those we work with, we want to influence the outcomes. And so often life around us weighs us down. And so sometimes we hit our limit and we just use the argument, the right thing to do is X, Y, and Z. It's very rarely true or accurate. It's very rarely useful, because it does a few things in a person when you tell them that they're wrong. I don't know if you've noticed this, but if you tell your kids they're wrong, if you tell your students they're wrong, if you tell their employees they're wrong, if you tell your partners they're wrong, very rarely does that conversation ever go the way you want it to go. It does several things, and here are the four failings of telling someone they're right or wrong, or they're wrong. Number one, you're setting up a false binary that generally does not exist in a general sense. Oftentimes when we talk about right or wrong, we're talking about politics, we're talking about work, we're talking about how to get something done at the house, we're talking about how to do something. Usually we're talking about how to do something. And when we tell someone you're doing it right or you're doing it wrong, we're often trying to instruct them to do something. But when we say you're wrong, we're setting up a false binary. How to do the homework, how to do something at work, how to do something of construction, how to work out and get big muscles, how to get a leaner gut, how to raise your margins in your business. There's many ways to do it. There's not a right or wrong way, especially a morally right or wrong way when it comes to how-tos. When you use this to execute or to take everyone through a different strategy, you're setting up a false binary that does not exist. It also shows that you don't know how or have the patience to explain your own position. You'd rather just use a moral construct and get the person to do what you want them to do. Now, the third thing it does is it pits you against that person. Do you want to be pitted against the person you're working with? Do you want to get pitted against the person at work? Do you want to get pitted against your kids? Do you want to get pitted against your team? Do you want to get pitted against these people? Tell them they're wrong. Why? Because it implies that you're right. Of course, we know this. So are these people team members that you want to have a relationship with, or they're people that you want to repel? So the net result is when you tell someone they're wrong regarding a how-to. Right and wrong, because it's a moral construct, cannot be told to anyone unless you're pitting yourself against them. The net result is disrespecting the person and thus repelling the type of help you actually want. So how do you get around this? How do you improve the communication of this? Well, I was pondering this. Ultimately, it's in changing your language and admitting, I want an outcome and I don't know how to communicate that outcome in this moment. You see, right or wrong, because they're moral, they're contextual. And in the context needs to be explained. The desired outcome. So here's what I want. Here's how you get around this. Number one, change your language. First, of course, seek first to understand. We all know when someone says something that is sabotaging the outcome we want. We all know that. It happens all the time. It happens everything where we are desiring a direction. Someone says something and we're like, I don't want to go that way. I don't want to do that. But if we're doing the 7 habits of highly effective people, we're going to seek first to understand. So how can we understand without creating these false binaries? Does your teammate have a different goal in their suggestions? Does your student have a different goal than you? Probably. If someone is offering a different direction, it's not just because they disagree with you necessarily. They probably haven't even thought about you. They probably just have a different idea in their mind. Do they have a different desired outcome that you just haven't considered yet? Or maybe aren't willing to consider. Maybe you did consider and ruled it out, but do you understand what their goal is? So seek first to understand. Number 2, in seeking to understand, choose language that admits that this is just a contextual conversation and admits that you have a different desire. Not that yours is empirically better, but if you're trying to collaborate, actually what your desire is. So instead of, hey, listen, the right way to do this or the wrong way to do that, instead of that, contextualize it. In this situation, I would prefer we do this, and here's why. It forces a dialogue. Is it exhausting? 100%. But what's the true goal? The true goal is better relationship. The true goal is better rapport. So how can you actually practice this today? I just want to leave you with this thought of you are probably sabotaging if you are not where you want to be. If you are not at the level of success that you want to be at. I'm 41 or 42. I don't even know. I'm in that range. And I have not completed the goals that I thought I would have completed years ago. I know it. And as I actually become self-aware and analyze what is going on with this, why haven't I achieved the things that I set out to achieve? Chances are I have not been as collaborative as I should have been. I've probably been too Machiavellian, or I've probably been too disconnected, or probably been too narcissistic. I don't know if I'm too psychopathic, but but who would admit that anyway? What we find is several things. Number one, we talked about this at one point, the alpha in a pack is not the dominator. The alpha in the pack is the collaborator. I find, just spoke to Adam last night, and Adam is trying to pull people together and wield people to achieve a positive outcome for everyone, but him included. And he is becoming an alpha in our little circles of how much he's pushing forward. And Brittany is paralleling this as well. The person who can get people to collaborate is the alpha. In your little team, it's not about being alpha. It's about the outcome of collaboration and the net result that we can move forward and move on and get these wins under our belt. So I want you to practice this today. I want you to be aware. And if you actually took inventory, I guarantee where your successes have dropped off, it's where collaboration failed. If you were trying to get a permit with the city, at some point you started arguing with them instead of collaborating with them. You made them an enemy instead of an ally. And the construct of right and wrong, at least in terms of how to achieve an outcome, a how-to, right and wrong as it comes to a how-to, is the thing that sacrificed that. So how can you practice this today? Number one, I want you to practice awareness of when someone says something you just disagree with. You're allowed to disagree. Disagreement is good. Different outlooks are good. Different goals are good. We all start with different goals. That's okay. There's nothing empirically wrong with that. Instead, so number one is practice the awareness. I am aware that I have a knee-jerk reaction I want to impose on this person. And I am aware of it. Just becoming aware. Number two, instead of verbalizing disagreement, play the game of understanding. It's a game. It's a game to get around your ego reactions and say, well, how do you mean that? Could you explain that further? Play the game of understanding. Seek first to understand. Can you take a moment to truly understand their motive? Why did they choose that? Or their desired outcome? You can't conclude. You can't know what they've thought about. You can't assume what's going on. Number one, practice awareness. Number two, instead of verbalizing disagreement and instead of verbalizing some made up empirical right or wrong, play the game of understanding. Can you take a moment to understand their motive and desired outcome? Number three, and then ask yourself in that moment, is this a team member? Is this person trying to sabotage me? Ask the question, because you'll start looping and think this person's sabotaging me. They're trying to stifle me. They're trying to shut me down. Is that true? More often than not, that's not true. Number three, if the discussion is even important at all. If the discussion is not important, let it go. No one needs to know your opinion about unimportant things. You don't need to expel the few heartbeats you have on this planet discussing things that just don't matter. But if the conversation is critical, take a moment to affirm that their thinking is good. Now, this is gonna be difficult on most of you. So based on your goal, I can see how that would help. Based on your desired outcome of getting that done quickly, cheaply, whatever, saving time, saving money, that would help. Only then should you take a moment. Seek first to understand, then be understood. Only then should you take a moment to say, well, in this situation, I would prefer we do X, and here's why. Can you see how this is more collaborative than combative? We don't need to set up enemies. There's enough enemies in this world. And when you say something's right or wrong, this is why religion, who of all the segments of our society, religion is the ethical and moral, hold ethical and moral compasses. And of course, it's hard to argue when it comes to metaphysical things that you can't prove or disprove, or send someone to say this is right and that's wrong. But this is also why they're entrenched in millennia-long battles. We're seeing this in Israel and Palestine right now. There's a moral right and wrong that both sides are fighting. You can't get around it. But when it comes to how-tos, when it comes to small goals, when it comes to achievements, the collaborative one wins. We are a collaborative species. When you impose a right or wrong on how to execute something, when you impose a right or wrong. Now, the difference is collaboratively, you can define the project and determine what is out of bounds and what is in bounds, what is helpful and what is not helpful. But you can still avoid to say this is right and this is wrong, because so many factors change so quickly. So the most adaptive, the most collaborative of the species is the one that is contributing more than they're consuming. When you set up right and wrongs, you actually stop the cycle. You stop the vibration of collaboration. You actually stop the species from progressing. When you set up a right or wrong and impose it on those around you, and what you're doing is you're not necessarily cutting off them unless they also are entrenched in a right or wrong, which they often are. What you've done is you've cut yourself off from the species. It's like you're an appendage of the species, and you've cut yourself off and said, if you're not like me, we can't work together. And you'll eventually die on the vine. So I know this is a little heady for a Monday morning, but if you want to see better results, if you want to be happier, if you want to achieve more quickly, eradicate right and wrong from your vocabulary. You can believe in a right and wrong. You can journal about a right and wrong. You can have a moral compass about what's right and what's wrong. I'm not talking about eliminating a moral compass inside of you. Don't get rid of that. That's your contribution to the world. But in terms of collaboration, in terms of achieving more goals, in terms of achieving happiness, I encourage you to use the phrase instead, in this situation, I would prefer. And definitely seek first to understand. Listen, I hope this has been at least moderately helpful to you this morning. I hope you're having a phenomenal week. I hope your week takes off. And listen, remember, if you need any help at all whatsoever, visit us at stateofthespark.com. Ask your questions, seek your solutions there, tools and training, or visit us at the Facebook Goals and Gratitude group. Yeah, it's relatively quiet there right now, but bring up your questions. I would love to engage in more of this dialogue in the Facebook Goals and Gratitude group. But no matter what you do today, remember the mission. Igniting lives of explosive significance, starting with your own.